Welcome back to Freedom's Ministry, April 18th, 2026. Diagrams for Living by Emmett Fox, Dr. Emmett Fox. Chapter 3, Water, Women, and Moon. The word Bible means the books. It is physically a collection of books, but metaphysically it is far more. It is a great vortex through which flows wonderful spiritual power into the individual soul who reads it with understanding. It is interesting to know how it came to be called the Bible. The name goes back to the early days of the Christian era, but it had its origin long before that. It takes its name indirectly from the ancient town of Byblos, slumbering peacefully in the warm sun of the eastern shore of the Mediterranean. Byblos is one of the world's oldest continuously inhabited cities. It prospered through the changing political structure of the ancient world by maintaining a neutrality in which it served as middleman in the vast Mediterranean trade. The Greeks, who purchased Egyptian papyrus from Byblos, immortalized the city's name by giving the diminutive biblion to the paper-like product imported from it. In time, the term was applied to any book written on papyrus, and early in the Christian era, papyrus, I believe, is cactus. It's, I believe, cactus paper, I think. And early in the Christian era, the name was reserved for the Christians' most important book, the Bible. The Bible contains a wealth of pure history, but primarily it deals with spiritual things which cannot be fully stated in limited language. So it uses symbols, parables, and allegories. Allegories. I always want to say allegories. Allegories, all of which were well understood by the men who wrote the Bible. They obviously expected the reader to see beyond the literal meaning to the real heart of the Bible. In the Bible, there are three basic meanings to every passage, meanings which are not contradictory, but which are supplementary and complementary. The first meaning is the historical fact or bare statement. The same is true of the parables and the allegories. For example, Jesus' parable of the 10 talents, or the pearl of gates, or pearl of the great price, or any of the others, all have a more or less obvious surface meaning. Behind the meaning is a secondary meaning which lies imprisoned in the statement. And there is a third meaning, which is the change brought about in the soul when the spiritual significance is really obtained and understood. It is the secondary meaning with which we are concerned, and it is because the inner meaning cannot be put directly into ordinary language that the Bible uses symbol and allegory. It is in this inner meaning that we find great diagrams for living. So whether it be parable or actual historical fact, there lie behind these accounts great spiritual truths. It should be re-emphasized that the lives of such real persons as Abraham, Moses, Mary, and Jesus are all grand parables of what can and does happen to the human soul. It's so much. The Bible is so amazing. Consequently, the Bible is full of spiritual symbols which, when understood, unlock the doors to the more abundant life. One of the most important symbols which runs all through the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, is the symbol represented by woman. The Bible is full of women, good women and the other kind, pleasant women and rather unpleasant ones, wise women and foolish women, rich women and poor women, simple women and learned women, all kinds of women. Woman is a continuing symbol throughout the Bible. For this reason, woman stands for the human soul. From a metaphysical point of view, the woman is not just Eve or Mary or Jezebel or any particular person. Woman signifies the human soul, your soul, or as psychology expresses it, the psyche or mind. That is represented by woman, and the history of woman in the Bible is the history of your soul and one of the keys to your destiny. The soul is not the divine part of you. The divine part is the I am, pneuma, which we will consider later. Your soul expresses itself as your personality, and that includes everything in the conscious and subconscious mind. So it is the changing personality, the psyche, which is represented by woman in the Bible. The whole of history is really the story of human soul, always changing, either getting better or getting worse. It is a receptive thing. this constant change in your thought, as you either allow the spiritual power, the I am, to govern, or you let the lower self have sway. So woman is the soul. Another important symbol for the human soul is water, and water and woman are closely connected. Water in the Bible from beginning to end means the human soul, another facet of the human mind, representing mental movement. For instance, the Israelites had to cross water first, the Red Sea, and later the Jordan, to get into the Promised Land. In other words, there had to be mental movement, a change in consciousness, before they could make their demonstration. A third symbol for the soul is the moon. The moon represents the human personality, with emphasis on the subconscious mentality, which is the power behind the mental throne. In Romeo and Juliet, Juliet says to Romeo, "Oh, swear not by the moon, the inconstant moon," but they do. And of course, the Bible says, "Swear not at all." Woman, water, and the moon are all interrelated. The moon governs the water. Every drop of liquid on this planet answers to the moon twice a day. The ocean, the lakes, the coffee in your cup, and even every drop of blood in your body responds to the moon twice a day. If you should let a cup of tea or coffee stand for 24 hours, there would be a tide in it, just as there is a tide in the Atlantic Ocean. Of course, it's too small to be observed or measured, but it is there nonetheless. So this gives us an inkling of the nature of the relationship which exists between the cosmos and man. These three things, woman, water, and the moon, mean the soul. Eve, who appears in the allegory about Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, is the first expression of the soul in the Bible. The word Eve means life or being, and your soul is your life or being here. It is derived from the word Isis, the moon goddess of Egypt. There is a wonderful old picture found in many museums of a woman with a child in her arms and with the 12 stars around her head and the moon under her feet. It represents the goddess Isis, whom the Egyptians called the Queen of Heaven. It is an idea far older than Christianity, teaching the truth about God and man and the soul, which has sought God and come through discouragement. Discouragement is one of the most powerful of devils. It keeps the soul back almost more than anything else. It was Eve who ate of the forbidden fruit, and as a result, she and Adam got into difficulties and were driven out of paradise. Adam in this parable represents the physical body. The word Adam means red earth or clay, the dust to dust idea. Now the soul is a source of all your troubles. Nothing ever happens to your body that does not first happen in your soul or mind. If you are sick, that sickness was first in your mind, either because you accepted a prevalent belief with your conscious mind or because it was lodged in your subconscious mind through previous negative thinking. Whatever appears in the body is first in the soul. The woman, the soul, eats of the forbidden fruit, and then the trouble appears in the body and outer conditions. So the first woman we hear about in the Bible is Eve. Then there is a whole procession of women in the Old Testament: Sarah, the wife of Abraham, Rachel and Leah, the wives of Jacob, Miriam, the sister of Moses, Deborah, the prophetess, and judge of Israel. She was amazing. Jezebel, wife of King Ahab, and many more. Then in the New Testament, we come to the Virgin Mary, the soul who gives birth to the Christ child. That is a much different state of consciousness from the Eve state. Eve represents the soul in the ignorant or not knowing condition, the experimental condition. It tries this and it tries that, and because it tries evil as well as good, it gets into trouble. It is the mixed fruit that causes difficulty. If we are to avoid going from pillar to post, we must steadfastly abstain from evil, from the lower or negative thought, no matter how tempting the fruit may be, and cleave only to good. The serpent which beguiled Eve is an old and complicated symbol which stands for limitation, enticement into limitation, the easy way. On the lower level, it means difficulty, restriction, frustration, according to the many things occurring to the soul. The serpent comes to tempt the soul in some shape or form, and the Bible represents God as dramatically saying, "I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. And as we noted with Jacob, the heel represents the vulnerable spot in one's thinking, one's emotions, one's body, one's character. It's the vulnerable spot. But of course, the heel is also the part that comes in contact with the ground and signifies that ultimately we shall crush the head of the serpent. The soul crushes the head of the serpent when you realize your spiritual character and refuse to be beguiled into seeking or taking the lower path with its temptations and deceptions. Now, in the beginning, the man is Adam, the red earth, because he believes what he experiences is the real thing. He thinks, I am John Smith. I am 40 years of age. I am a lawyer. I live in such and such a place. I have 2 children. I am a Methodist. But that is not the real man. That is Adam, the limited expression, while the true self is divine spirit. Always man is always man is first the physical body, but later he recognizes that he is basically and fundamentally spiritual. Adam becomes the Christ. As Paul later says, the first man is of the earth, earthy. The second man is the Lord from heaven. You must be renewed in the spirit of your mind by putting off the old man and putting on the new man, which after God is created in righteousness and true holiness. When the soul and the spirit become one with God, that is the mystical marriage, and any infidelity to that union is adultery, not marriage. The Virgin Mary symbolizes the virgin soul, but this does not necessarily mean an unmarried person. A married person can be just as spiritual as an unmarried person. You can have a pure mind no matter what state you are in. The virgin soul is the soul which has put God first and is completely concentrated on God, dutiful to family, friends, neighbors, business, etc., but dutiful to God first. The virgin soul is first the bride and then becomes the wife. Sometimes it happens that the soul feels it has fallen away from God. For days, weeks, months, or perhaps years, it has been filled with peace and beauty, and then for some reason that fades out and is lost for a while. The Bible says, left a widow, and a widow's state was a hard one in the Orient. Mystics call that the dark night of the soul. That is a testing time when you wrestle with the angel all night long, or perhaps night after night, until light comes again. The most important thing in the long run is belief in the union with God. Infidelity really means lack of faith in God. It does not mean that you do not believe in the teaching of a particular church, or that you do not believe in the 39 Articles or the Westminster Catechism. It means you do not have faith in God to help you and teach you. In the Bible, adultery, infidelity, and idolatry are interchangeable terms. For this reason, it is not in reference to the physical, but in connection with the soul, as the bride of the Spirit, that the terms are used. Do you see the symbolism? Jesus was the first of the great teachers to put women on equality with men. The woman just as good as the man, her soul just as important, and she could do just as much, right or wrong. The people around him in the area where he was brought up had regarded women as simply an appendage of man. If he went to heaven, she went with him as part of his luggage. Jesus came forward and said, no, woman had a soul of her own. He was the first to really teach that, although unfortunately his teaching was not carried out until very recent years. Even Paul had his reservations concerning women. It has been a long and sometimes bitter struggle, but through the years women have found increasing freedom and equality with men, and it is because women fundamentally represents the human soul, that whatever and whenever women have been emancipated, both the standard of living and the spiritual welfare of the entire population has advanced. The Bible handles its women characters in a complete and thorough manner. It speaks of a virgin prominently and frequently in the prophecies and throughout the story of Israel. The virgin daughter of Israel, etc. It speaks of women as wife and spouse. It says that when you are really sincere in finding God, you will be no longer You will be no longer to me a servant, but a wife, for thy Maker is thine husband. God will not be your master, but your husband. It speaks of the true wife and the woman, not the true wife throughout the Old Testament. For instance, Abraham wed Hagar, the bondservant of his wife Sarai. But Hagar was by no means the equal of Sarai, and their sons were not equal either. There are many, many instances then of the wife, the spouse, the bride, and the mother, and sometimes, as already stated, a widow. It speaks of the soul as an adulteress. All these terms have a real and significant meaning. Remember, when you read the Bible, you are reading an ancient Oriental book compiled for a population living under different conditions, needs, and above all, for a population which could neither read or write. Consequently, many of its symbols are perhaps not in perfect accord with modern taste. We must take the Bible as we find it and seek for the underlying meanings. The Bible presents another condition of the soul in the person of Jezebel, a lady with a reputation. Jezebel was the daughter of Ethbaal, the king of Tyre. She married Ahab, king of Israel, and for many years wielded her evil power. She did everything she could to promote pagan rites and religion and to destroy the worship of the one true God. The Bible says there was none like unto King Ahab, which did sell himself to work wickedness in the sight of the Lord, whom Jezebel his wife stirred up. In her personal life, she constantly entertained the heathen prophets of Baal and others until it was common gossip of her whoredoms and witchcrafts. In the exercise of her lust for power and her remorseless brushing aside of anything and everything that interfered with the carrying out of her evil designs, she was the veritable prototype of Catherine de Medici. Jezebel is still well and alive today. Jezebel represents the soul which is completely given up to selfishness, sensuality, and material things. She came to quite an unpleasant end. She was thrown down from a high place. When one gets up on a high horse, he finds himself in one of the most dangerous spots in the world. It's pride. That's what the first sin was, pride. A new king, Jehu by name, came to town to wipe out the wickedness in the place. Jezebel went out on an upper balcony and shouted to him. He ordered that she be thrown down to the ground and her body lay there until the dogs devoured it, which was considered a very bad end. Needless to say, dogs in the Bible refer to perish or scavenger dogs, which are repulsive in every way. The story tells us that the dogs devoured Jezebel, leaving only her skull, the palms of her hands, and the soles of her feet. The skull symbolizes the intellect. The palms of the hands are diagrams of destiny, and the soles of the feet represent previous lives. In other words, Jezebel did not escape her destiny by dying. She would have to meet the consequences of her wrongdoing elsewhere. The left hand, in a manner, represents the cards you start life with, and the way you handle them. The way you play the game of life is represented in the right hand. People in the truth movement usually find that the right hand is better than the left hand because they make a consistent effort to elevate their consciousness and thus spiritually improve their lives. You cannot dodge your problems. You cannot dodge the consequences of your thoughts and deeds. You have to meet them, work them out, and wipe them out by prayer, realizing God sufficiently to clear them away. Or like Jezebel, you will be destroyed and will have to tackle them in some other incarnation. In contrast to Jezebel and all that she stands for, we have the Virgin Mary. Mary represents the soul, which is centered upon God. Mary represents the soul which is centered upon God. It is the soul which is definitely saying, now I am going to put God first, like I've been saying throughout this ministry, and everything else in my life is going to be secondary. I shall do my duty, but outside things will have to take second place. From now onward, the thing that really matters is finding God and developing my soul. The Bible calls that the second birth in some places, and that state is represented by the Virgin Mary. She came from Nazareth. All these geographical names signify certain conditions which the soul may find itself in. These symbols are not fanciful, they are definite codes. just as an engineer finds certain symbols in a book dealing with engineering problems. Of course, you will find the Bible symbols appearing not only in the Bible, but also in the old occult literature, in old folk stories, fables, and fairy tales. These symbols are repeated in literature, art, and architecture everywhere. Some of the New York buildings have them. At Rockefeller Center, for example, go to the Metropolitan Opera and listen to any of Wagner's operas. Though he may not have been consciously aware of it, he was using this sort of symbolism in every one of his operas. Nazareth has a meaning. It means set apart. It does not mean going away into the desert and taking oneself out of the world. It means being in the world, but not of the world. The Virgin Mary came out of Nazareth, and the world of that day said, "Can any good thing come out of Nazareth?" Mary coming out of Nazareth means you must set your soul apart, or the Christ child cannot be born. The human soul finds itself in, I said born, born again, born, new word, maybe. The human soul finds itself, almost done. The human soul finds itself in the condition. Important stuff here. The people have, messed up because it all starts from symbolism before words. The human soul finds itself in the condition where it is seeking for God because it is never really happy without God. It's true. It's true. It's true. It's true. We eat and eat and eat and eat and smoke and smoke and smoke and drink, drink, drive, 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 do whatever we want. And you never fill that hole. Only God. And when the soul really becomes centered upon God, that is Mary. The word Mary has two meanings. We have it in the form of the Hebrew word Miriam, the sister of Moses, and we have it as Mary, the mother of Jesus. One means rebellion or insurrection, the rebellion of the soul against present limited conditions. The other meaning comes from Mara, meaning bitter, a struggle to escape from the limitation of self, but not without bitter experience. Distrust any teacher who tells you the way of salvation is an easy one. It is never a rosy path or anything of the kind. Salvation is difficult, but not too difficult. People in the Bible have walked that path, and millions of men and women have done so since. You and I can too, but there will be bitterness. You will not get your salvation through a few Pollyanna affirmations, but by a definite transformation in the soul. The reward, however, is great, and to such a soul is born the Christ child, and all which that implies. Thank you all for listening. I really appreciate all your support. Like, share, subscribe. I need subscribers. Keep coming back. Soon, probably tomorrow. Chapter 4, Man the Builder. He's an awesome book right here, and we got to get into his mind some more because it's a great mind. Thank you all for listening. Have a great and wonderful day because you have great minds too. Make them better. Keep making them better. Let's do it. Keep coming back. Love you. Over and out.